All right, traders, welcome to the watch list video. This is the second video of the weekend. And, here we'll get into obvious trade setups for next week. And risk disclaimer in front of you, of course, everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. So what is the watch list video all about and how am I using it? Well, first of all, it's a starting point for the week. And, we'll obviously look for more setups as the week materializes, right? I mean, I think last week is a great observation in terms of things did not, materialize as far as the way that I was thinking when I was putting out the weekend watch list. Things changed very rapidly last week. So again, it's a starting point for the week. We'll kind of change setups and I may not get into some of these names if, events really change or if the dynamics of price and trend really change for the week. But for now, these are the setups that I'm liking. And I use, I scan through FinViz. I use a lot of my watch lists. I also do some open scanning, right, where I'm looking for either, I run like a high short interest scan. I run, basically I can run names for the S&P 500. And then I can also put in some criteria where, names that are above the, making a 20-day new high, so I can look for relative strength. I'm doing all that over the weekend. And then I'm kind of really just filtering in for names that I like out of the whole group. So I'm using this list that I have in two ways, right? So of course I'm going to use this for the weekly watch list trade, where I'm going to buy the whole list on Monday and sell out of the SPY that I put in to that trade on that I put in on Friday, right? I do that substitution. I get out of the current watch list and go into SPY, hold it over the weekend, and then sell it on Monday and go into the new watch list. And then swing trade triggers. So I'm going to go through the list with you and talk about where these will kind of set up and trigger for a potential long for a swing trade, right? So that'll be coming up. You can go through these bullets here on your own, but these are the same that I have every week. I'm looking for relative strength. I'm really looking at, I would add to this week, I'm really looking at, names that, I'm being objective, right? We've seen a decent rotation over the last week or two. And, so some of these names you kind of want to, like, if you haven't been in them, sometimes you just kind of have to cover up the symbol and say, hey, what does this chart look like to you? All right. So that said, I've got a pretty diverse watch list for this week. I always like to start with last week's watch list. Obviously this did not materialize very well. And it kind of motivates me to I think I've had 2 weeks of a little bit of underperformance after, multiple weeks of outperformance. I would add that, holding that SPY, actually, that's not true. Yeah, I held SPY the week prior to that. So, I think that was the right thing to do during the election. And the account performance of this weekly watch list trade has done pretty well, despite, the list being down 1.6% for the week. Names like Snowflake and Datadog really didn't do well last week. Square was down 10% last week. And then names like Expedia, Disney, Restoration Hardware were a bit stronger. But let's get into, again, I always like to review the week prior performance to see how the list did. But let me go ahead and open this in Screener and then charts. And we'll kind of start with the number one. So here's the spreadsheet that, again, I will copy and paste into Slack. Let me just get that set up here. And this is an ETF, so I need to label that one. So you could see from this list, before I kind of get into some individual names, I've got a few tech names in here. I've got definitely material names in here, a couple industrial names in here. This is not the China ETF names. I've got one or two dip buy names. That's Alibaba. And, one consumer staple name in there. One thing that I didn't review sectors in the last video, but where I'm seeing some strength, right? And I'll just review a couple of these, but obviously industrials, materials, right? They kind of look very, very similar. The industrials as well as materials ETF, depending on the ETF, but biotech looks strong, right? Interesting, by the way, the dynamics between the equally weighted biotech ETF and the one that's market cap weighted, meaning larger names that are in, larger biotech names have not broken out here. So XBI has done it. It's got that smaller cap exposure in there, right? Again, equally weighted, the smaller cap names get the same weight as the larger cap names. So the smaller caps are doing a little bit better. But so biotech looks pretty good, small cap biotech. And of course, the financials are showing some strength here too, right? Energy had a big week too. Still in a downtrend. So that's a little bit, and then if we break apart tech, tech is close. You can't really, I think, get too down on tech here because it's not showing, a breakdown of any sorts. If you want to look across the group, software was not where it was last week, obviously. And the semiconductors were actually not performing, didn't have a huge week either last week. They had a huge week the week prior. So, that's a little bit of a sector view. I'm not going through every sector here, but I thought what was also interesting here is consumer discretionary, which Amazon is a big weight, about 22% of this ETF, not at 52-week highs, but consumer staples are. So consumer staples had a huge week last week. So, I think the conclusion of this is that various different groups you may or may not be in are showing some relative strength to them. So I want to follow that. Do I want to just jump into groups because, they're showing relative strength? Not necessarily, but I do want to kind of scan through those groups and look for quality names, right? I'm not going to really say, hey, I want more value or I want more growth. What I want is to look at relative strength and position based on quality, owning quality, right? And avoiding some names, even though you may think them fundamentally as quality. I want to avoid the names that are looking a bit weaker. All right, so let's go into the group for this week. So Apple, kind of like the overall tech XLK ETF, it's almost there. It's very close to breaking out. So I did put Apple on the watch list. I think if it breaks, basically, we'll call it 120 just to round up a little bit. Again, I like to look at these 1 hour charts too in the smaller time frame for the triggers. And this is going to be, notice that Apple just could not do it last week. I think even better than 120 would be nice, but I would also watch for a break above 121.44. Right, that's going to be this week's top of value. That's basically where Apple started for the week last week. So I'm actually going to use that as the trigger for a swing. So that's going to be 121.40. Right, and I'm going to put the time frame here. That's on the 1 hour chart. Right, so 120 will be nice, right? But for a little bit of a stronger signal, 121.40. All right, then I've got AXP. I talked about this name on Bloomberg on Friday. 117.15 is where that's going to come on the 1 hour, and I think that's perfect. So 117.15, and that's also going to come on the 1 hour for a trigger. Again, AXP, you kind of have to zoom out a little bit, realize that this is way below, where this was last year, and is starting to trend. Now it could back and fill, a little bit from that gap up that we saw last week, or it could gap up and keep going. So that's why we were putting that alert at that top of value. All right, next one, Boeing. I don't think I've had Boeing on the watch list for, all of this year. So now I think it's interesting here. right? And I like that if it wants to do a retracement, it's above the 200-day moving average. It's above value for the month. And let's see where this thing wants to go here. I would say 180, 188, let's call it 189 would be the trigger for this week. They, of course, may have some news out about the max. But again, this is purely, looking at the technicals and noting that it looks pretty decent here. So that's going to come on the 1 hour as well. Right. And again, if we want to look at this before I go to Alibaba, again, doing something different. So I'm going to stick with some names that are doing something different. This could really, if it gets going with momentum, it has some open ground to cover. All right, and let's look up here too. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't see any virgin point of controls up here that we have to watch out for on the 1 hour or on the daily. Really weird, considering the move down that Boeing has had. You would think there would be all kinds of virgin point of controls, but it's been sideways, right, for the last 5 months. All right, next name, Baba. In the headlines a lot. So what I like about Baba, this is a dip play, and I like to have 1 out of 20 names on my list be a dip play. Why do I like this so much? Because it took out 2 VPOCs last week on the daily chart, and there's no bounce yet. So there's no confirmation. There's no signal yet. One thing I would be a little bit mindful of is there's another 1 hour VPOC down here at 249, which is about another $11 down. So if this breaks value, you have to kind of watch out for that, right? And that's 258. Now, the trigger would be basically as long as it stays here and doesn't break value, but I will give you a 5-minute trigger for this one. I would say, a move above 262, right? That'll get you not only above this week's, not only above the 5-minute value area, but will also get you like above this trend here. So I'm going to say 262.25 for Baba. I did position in this one on in my trading account on Friday. We saw a lot of call activity. Obviously the call activity that we saw is not near term. They actually were positioning later out in 2021. So somebody thinks that this is a good dip to buy in Baba for the longer term. All right, so I've got some material names in here. DuPont, Dow, Deere. Those are 3 names in here. So remember, we've seen a lot of call positioning in DuPont. This name broke out beginning of the week. I took my profits in the trade, and it's basically coming back and sitting back and testing the breakout zone. So I like this from a technical standpoint, as long as it stays above value, which is 60. For a trigger for the week, you maybe watch 6. I'm going to round up. I always round up, by the way, from where value area is, which is 62.82. I'll say 63. And that's going to come on the 1 hour. All right. Deere. I like Deere, pretty decently here. It's, again, you're going to see this in just about every chart. This gap up on Monday. Notice that it sat back. Right, and I would look for a move above 255, also on the 1 hour. Right, that's where the trigger is. A lot of these are above value on the daily chart, so that's where we're kind of looking for the trigger for next week. Dow's another name, kind of similar look to DuPont. Right, gapped up on Monday and came back and retested the top of value and bullish engulfing. So again, not extended here. Same thing with DuPont. So above value. And if you're looking for a trigger, I know this is a little bit of, this is not perfect. I think waiting for that long is a little bit late. So you could use that top of value on the 1 hour. Really, I think if it just gets above 52, that could trigger for a short-term trade. And then you will have to contend with that top of value. All right. I did look at, some other restaurant stocks, but I like this Brinker. It's been basing now for a few months. Again, gap up, faded, and just closed above value on Friday. I would watch for a break above 49, let's say 49.20. Whoops. And that's also going to come on the 1 hour. Right, 1 hour chart. Again, I looked through some names here. I looked at Chipotle. No signal really. It's in value. I looked at McDonald's. McDonald's really, other than the day or two after earnings, hasn't really done much here. I looked at Darden too. Darden did take out, took out 2 of those VPOCs. Darden's not a bad play here too, versus 103.95 support. I looked at Cheesecake Factory, which got a bunch of, this probably I would say would be the second favorite out of this group. Because it did get a couple upgrades last week too. So I would watch this one. I'll probably put this one in the in this channel, the Market Web's chart setups channel. By the way, I threw a couple names in here that did not make the watch list, but I'm still watching. Fuel Cell is a really interesting one, just as I'm getting sidetracked here a little bit from the list, but that's fine. 336 off the weekly chart. If you want to play it like a cheapy alternative energy play, I think this is a nice looking play if it gets above that value area on the weekly chart. So really interesting to me there. The home builders, I'm not really sure about I'm sorry. Here's Lennar. A lot of these had a big day, I think, on Tuesday, but no follow through. So another name that's really has spent some time in digestion, and I'll like it if it gets, if it triggers back into value, 77.64. But the home builders group, if we look at this group, it's sitting right below value. So it won't take much to trigger. And it could also, we don't know if it's going to basically fail here and start heading back down. I think, I'm leaning bullish on this side. Considering that the numbers are so strong that are coming out for the housing reports. So yeah, I mean, even if you want to play this whole group, right, that would be a move above, call it 56 for the home building group. But for now, below value for the month. Generac is another name that I'm watching. I went through and looked at some solar stocks. I don't know if the solar stocks are going to be in a little bit of digestion mode after such a big run up. One name that I think is interesting, it's above value, is Generac. I don't like the big volume on red days, but we'll see if this kind of holds. So that will be a name that I'm watching. Again, not going on the watch list, but I will be watching it, and we'll have an alert set. Right around 226, I think, is the alert set, which is top of value. All right, so a little bit of a sidetrack there, but that's basically how I'm using this over the weekend, is just to put some ideas in here with some levels, some levels to set for alerts, and then just wait, be patient, and see if they trigger for an alert for the setup with the alert placed. All right, let's get back into, so a little bit of a sidetrack there with off of the restaurant stocks. So Ford. Again, another name that, probably hasn't been on the watch list all year long. But take a look at the chart, cover up the symbol. It's above value. It's just above value. It's not extended. And 824 is your support. And if you want to trigger, I would go, I think it's already triggered on multiple time frames here. So it's above value. Daily, it looks like it's going to be above value on the 1 hour. Let's see if I can get you a level for the 5 minute, and that's going to be 850. Call it 858. And that will come on the 5 minute. All right, next. This name, I was kind of borderline on putting this one It's not above value, but it's just inside the value area for the month of November. So it's above the 50-day moving average. I like when you've got support right there, bottom of value and the 50-day moving average. And it looks like it's going to possibly start the week above value. And 273. We'll round up here a little bit and say 273 will be the 5-minute trigger. All right. So another, I've got a couple new ones in here in the growth area. One of which is shift for payments, right? Nice move out of value, and then a little bit of a move, a small move back on low volume. So it's at the top of value for the month, which is good. For a trigger, very easy setup here, 61.40. Next, I do have a financial in here. The Goldman was a name that I talked about last week. Again, big base, not extended. If you wanted to establish a position here, I think fine versus a 212.70 stop, or 212.50 if you want to give yourself a little bit more tolerance. For a trigger, looks like it's going to be start the week above value. So again, a lot of these charts, they look pretty good. And they're triggering on these already on the daily and on the 1 hour, 220.50. And that's also going to come on the 5-minute. All right, I did add Cloudflare in here. In an uptrend, right? Broke out on earnings and hasn't done much since here. Again, if you're long, I would use basically a stop of like, say, 60.50. And for a trigger for the week, looks like it's going to be 65.30. Let's see how this is going to look for Monday's value area. Yeah, I think that's fine. So what level did I say here? As I just forgot it. 65. Let's call it 65.40. And that's going to come on the 1 hour. All right, this was another name that I traded last week. Options, I tend to have a itchy trigger finger on options. It's moving through the value area. So notice it's got some resistance here at 51.31. It's above all the short-term moving averages. Didn't have such a hot day on Friday. For a trigger, I would watch 48.75. 48.75. Next, Starbucks. Trigger will be 96 on the 1 hour. And I think this is already going to be above value. So again, looking for continuation, looking for a breakout in Starbucks. Yeah, so it's going to be 96. All right. So the semi space. I just figured to kind of go with the whole semi ETF here. I think it looks fine. I mentioned that there was a little bit of digestion last week in the semis ETF. For a trigger, I would watch 198. And that's going to come on the 1 hour. Names that I like in the group. Taiwan Semi, which I traded last week. It's funny because, everybody was talking about Taiwan Semi on Friday because it did see some option activity and some nice volume on this break higher. I played this earlier in the week and I was content. I thought it hit resistance on Thursday. And I think that's when I got out of my position in Taiwan Semiconductor. And of course, I'm missing the breakout. So I think this is probably one of the best setups within the group. Micron was in Barron's this weekend. there's nothing wrong with this Micron chart either. It took out the VPOC on Monday and it looks like it wants to get over it. So Micron is showing some nice strength to it. Also, Applied Materials had good earnings, right? They're managed to kind of leg higher after the earnings report. So again, you can kind of pick through different names. I know everybody's favorite, everybody likes to talk about AMD. I figured I'd bring up that chart too. The problem with AMD, it's not really triggering. It's in value for the week. Could it see a move through that top of value where it hit resistance at 86.14? It could, but really I would watch for a break higher, above value. If you're in it, I would maybe target that 86.14 and then play for a breakout, but just not strong enough for me to put on the watch list this week. Of course, NVIDIA reports this week too. That may dictate a move in those two. AMD will probably see some pin action one way or another, but maybe we'll look to play an earnings trade in NVIDIA once that they report on the 18th. All right, so I like the whole group. STZ. Remember that this is a little bit of an under the radar play in the pot space, right? They have a stake in CGC. If you want to look at that chart for CGC, actually, not a bad setup here. Obviously got a little bit ahead of itself on earnings, gapped all the way up to 26. Remember I was talking about the weekly chart. It is in value and you can use this 2120 on the weekly chart. STZ, I wanted to show you the weekly chart there too. There's a VPOC up here. I believe there's a VPOC up here. Oh. Yeah, well, that's actually not saying it's there. I guess this was touched. So close. But it is above value. It's the first time it's been above value since all the way back in February. So again, this is Constellation Brands. 1 hour signal is going to come right around. We'll use the Venom from this past week, so 202.50. Next, Target. Target, I like what's going on here in Target, even though it's going to have some resistance up at 166. I like how it's just, rested here on the moving averages and is grinding higher. So provided that it triggers here, it looks like it's going to be above value already on the 1 hour. 5 minute, I put 163.50. And that's going to come on the 5 minute. All right, TTD, I think kind of got lost a little bit last week. Remember, had real strong earnings, gapped up on earnings, low volume pullback, right? Big volume on the earnings move. This usually happens after earnings. The volume tends to decline a little bit. So, this is one name in the software space that I would watch. And I'm going to put 766. Oops, that's the wrong level. Oh, is that right? Oh, wow, it is pretty far away from there. So that is 766, right? And that would get you, right? That's $30 up. So yeah, unfortunately, that would kind of be up here. It's a little bit of ways. I don't like that trigger so far away from price. Where is that on the daily chart? Is that such a big level? Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's what's going to be. Yeah, that'll tell you, would give you decent confirmation that it's going higher. So I'll put 766. That's what the market webs are telling me to put. So I'm going to put that on the 1 hour. And then last one, spec play. I might put this one a little bit of a smaller weight. You could see that this is all the history that we have, but really strong move, up 12%. It's a high momentum play. I would put 116 as your trigger. And yes, I will probably make this one a smaller weight. Maybe just like a 2% weight in the watch list trade for the week. So there you have it. So how many names do we have here? We've got perfect 20 names here, right? So every name will be close to 5%, except for you, which I'll make a little bit smaller weight in here, guys. All right, that's it for the watch list. If there's any other names that you guys really jumping off the page to you, you could post them in the Q&A channel, and I'm happy to kind of go over what my opinion is on those names, and happy to kind of add any names or delete any names that you guys really favor or don't favor. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of Football Sunday.